Hey, Michelle, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here.
Thanks. Great to be here.
So, all things midlife, including skincare, and what else?
Midlife, skincare, speaking, coaching, hormones.
Okay.
Yeah.
All of that stuff.
All of the good stuff.
Yeah. So, what was your kind of awakening to midlife like?
At around 42, I had what I call an unraveling. I know that the current language around menopause and perimenopause is sort of a midlife crisis. I don't really consider what I had or what this is a crisis. A crisis would be a lot easier to manage. You just create some bullet points and you just hit those bullet points and then the crisis would be over, right? So this unraveling sort of came at a point when I'm very happily married. I have 2 kids. It came at a point where, and I didn't see it coming, it came at this point where I thought everything is good. It's really good. And why am I feeling like this? And it was at that moment that I started to really feel the pangs of time. And the sort of process I help guide women through, I call it aligning with time. I didn't call it that then, and I had no idea time was part of it. But that unraveling was the ticket. Was the ticket
When you
in.
say unraveling, what do you mean? Like, what unraveled?
So it wasn't like a depressive slide. It was more a moment where everything was good. There was no reason to feel bad. There was no physical outside experience or cause of it. But inside, what I wanted to do was run. I wanted to leave my life. I wanted to change things. And it felt like none of my normal tricks to help myself feel better, to help myself evaluate myself. None of those things worked in that moment. So it was in that moment I decided, okay, all right, let's go in. Let's go inward. Let's get really quiet and let's figure this out. So the process of going to doctors and talking about it with them. I mean, midlife is not a medical condition. There's no pill.
Yeah.
There's no surgery.
But what were you experiencing? It wasn't depression.
It wasn't depression. It was
Just like something's not
literally
right.
a feeling of isolation and unsettledness in my life, but with no specific cause or reason to feel that way.
Okay. Did it then become apparent, or it was like, this is hormonal, this is now midlife, and this is just something I need to go through and ride the wave?
So it isn't so cut and dry like that for me. Part of my own health journey through my 30s and well into my 40s and even now is really finding healers, finding people who use all different forms of healing. That's really helped me. So in going here in this moment, I realized that finding people to help me normalize the feeling. So acupuncturists, I have an energy healer that I work with who works with both me and my energy and also the energy of my businesses. Those are some of the people I called on. And that's what brought me to this place of figuring it out. And the East and the West, so the East and the West are really big for me personally and also in my work. And so from an Eastern perspective, what was happening was this energy, this womb energy is shifting, right? It has to go somewhere. I've talked about this often. So in this moment, figuring out where this energy is going to go, figuring out how to harness the energy instead of have it be this storm of energy was really important. Yeah.
Okay, so it was more just of like this unsettled, like, I don't know why I'm feeling this way, because externally things are good, but internally it just doesn't feel good. It was a mismatch.
It was a mismatch.
Which I think people can relate no matter what phase of life
Absolutely.
they're in. It's like there's this mismatch, and it's like, how do you actually discover your next step, so to speak, or your next iteration? Because, we're every phase of life is different. And so if you're in a tough phase right now, it's a phase. And if you're in a great phase, it's a phase, right? And there's so many phases of life. I'm kind of learning this as I age, right? Of like, oh, like I can see things now. I'm 39. So I can see things now that like in my 20s, like I thought were like this big deal, that now I have this different perspective. And I can see that even with having a child, like the way that my mom interacts with my child is very different than the way she interacted with me, because she has experience and she understands that things, you know, they go through their phases and it's fine. So what came next for you in terms of, because I know this became part of your work, what were you doing before?
So way before, I was a set and costume designer in theater. So I was accustomed to talking to people in a very vulnerable state around the space they inhabited and also their physical body and how they imagine. I mean, what we think our body looks like and what the world perceives our body are two, usually, and I say this from working with all walks of life, very, very famous, well-known actors to, you know, some of the greatest off-Broadway actors. I mean, you know, you just get this. Everyone has a perception of their body that is very different than what the outside world sees. So, so how has that impacted my work? I mean, in taking women through this process, aligning with time, which is what I call it, aligning with time is really really being present with the now, which is very different than going to your past. I think of past as really, I mean, a mentor sort of gave me this idea, or sort of passed this idea on, and I've sort of run with it, that our past is memories and lessons. And if we gather the memories and learn the lessons, this is, of course, very simplified, but if we gather the memories and we cherish them and we hold them dear, it helps keep us present right now. Because I think what a lot of women do is we try to turn back the clock. We try to reverse age. We try to defy time. And it's just, that isn't aging. You know, that's not the reality of aging. And what we look like in our skin isn't necessarily a part of the aging. I mean, this is the body. It's not really, it's the experience or the soul or the consciousness of the true aging process of gathering knowledge and what that has to offer.
So I just want to quote you, that you are saying that our perception of our body and what the world sees are generally two very different things.
Working with nearly 1,000 actors, that's my experience.
Yeah, I think that's probably true in most cases, and because everybody has a different perception anyways.
Absolutely.
Right?
My red is different than your red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I study Buddhist meditation, and something that they say in Buddhist meditation is the self that you normally perceive doesn't exist, because you're identifying with a sense of self, but your sense of me and my sense of me is totally different. So which one is real? Is yours not real, or is mine not real? And we tend to think like, oh, because I see it, you know, that this is real, but that's not true.
No.
Yeah. I think it's actually helpful to have somebody.
Hugely helpful.
Yeah, and we could do that with wrinkles, right? Like, you know, we could say, oh, I have so many wrinkles, and someone else might say, no, you don't.
Definitely.
Right?
Definitely.
But I love the idea with aligning with time, because we have such a relationship with time, and we're usually either, you know, thinking about the past and recycling through those memories, or we're projecting into the future. And so the idea of aligning with time is just another way, it sounds like, of being present to what is.
Totally. And I speak about aligning with time very specifically in health. Particularly, I mean, certainly in beauty. Of course, I love products. I love the experience that I have with my body when I use my products. But beyond that, with health, and this is the kind of thing like in midlife, we do a lot of stuff to ourselves in our 20s and 30s, and our body can kind of, in our teens, and our body can take it, right? Our cellular regeneration is pretty amazing, and we heal pretty quickly, all things being equal, right? But there comes a time where the yin and the yang sort of catch up, right? And we cannot deplete one and have balance. The body doesn't equilibrium like that anymore, quite the same way. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that it ever did, if you were to ask a Buddhist. But so in looking to the future, the really interesting thing is what you do now, what we as women do now, at 45, 46, 47, whatever age, impacts 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. So in aligning right now in your health practices, you're actually creating the organ reserve, you're creating the emotional state, you're creating the energetic manifestation, if you will, of your future. But you have to be doing it now. You can't be present in the past to create your future.
So what do you actually do, you personally, to align with time in your life?
I do a lot of things.
Like what?
It's a big long list. The first thing I do, it's sort of a non-negotiable, is the quality of food.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if the quality of food is not there, I'd prefer to fast. And I say that having been someone who has never had a weight issue and never had an eating disorder. And I think that's really rare for women in this day and age.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is shocking, that so many women struggle with eating disorders.
That's shocking to you? I'm shocked that it's shocking to you.
And I was a dancer, and that's still shocking to me. I mean, I knew in the dance world it existed, but I didn't know outside the dance world that it existed. I never had friends that showed that side. I never had friends that the anorexia or the bulimia was physically present. The practices were very quiet, and they actually, I mean, it comes to be that they weren't very good at it, and their bodies kind of defied it, right?
Yeah.
Which I don't think that, I mean, obviously that's not the case with everyone.
Yeah. I mean, it's complex because...
It's so complex.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I'll say I had, disordered eating, but I was very quiet about it. And I think most of my friends and family didn't really know until my family eventually addressed it directly to me in my 20s. And it wasn't something you could necessarily physically see because I joke that I was such a perfectionist that I hid it. I was one of those like hidden perfectionists. And it wasn't so extreme, like I wasn't bulimic or anorexic, that I could get away with just like this whole dysfunctional, disordered way of being with food and with my body. I kind of went off on a tangent right there, and now I forgot the point that I was actually trying to make. But
it happens to me all the time. We were talking about fasting, and I was saying how surprised I was about. I mean, having worked with.
Oh, this is what I was going to say. Is that we're often not like we have health classes in school, but they don't teach you about digestion and actually the impact of food. That was like a huge transformation for me. I mean, I've talked about this many times, but it's so important.
It is the basis. I mean, if you don't feed the vessel will break down. It will eat itself. It will break down muscle. It will burn all the fat. It will break down muscle, and then it will start breaking down tissue. So without nourishment, I mean, that's just like a basic like birthright need, right? But without that, it affects everything.
So then what else do you do? So you
I'd prefer to fast over eat food that doesn't serve my body. And I've learned that the hard way through an autoimmune disease.
Do you avoid certain things like carbs or?
Well, I can't eat gluten.
Right. Okay.
So that limits a lot of food outside in the world.
Which is a blessing in disguise.
It is
in some ways.
Absolute blessing in disguise. I think that's why I function. I think that's why my brain functions at such a level. I think that's why, partly why I look the way I look, and why weight has for the past 20 years. I mean, I've never had a problem with weight, but I think now being almost 48, I think it's a massive blessing that I don't eat this thing that metabolizes as sugar and basically it's just pounds. So that's one thing. The other thing I do that sounds slightly vain, but it is really true, is I wash my face every night. Even if night means 6:30 when I get home from work, like I wash my face and I honor that ritual as being part of connecting with myself. What worked in the day, what didn't work in the day, what could I do better, what am I grateful for? Because being a mom of 2 boys, it is not quiet. There is no meditative state in my household, as much as I try. I love them, but it's I'm a mother of boys.
I have 1 boy.
You have 1 boy, so you get it. You get what I'm saying. Multiply that. That energy is just unbelievable.
I'm like, keep going because I need to prepare myself. Yeah. So what else? Incredible. You wash your face.
And then quite recently, I've gotten really serious about who I surround myself with. Who are the people that I call home? Who are the people I reach out to? Who are the people? I mean, I know who my people are. Do you know what I mean? And I really set strong boundaries around what I tolerate. And when I say tolerate, like we all have to tolerate to some extent, but we don't have to say yes to a lot of the things we say yes to. And I really credit that to a decline in estrogen. Like I no longer feel like I have to take care of my family, my extended family, or the greater room at large in order for everyone to feel good and happy and have a great time. That's one of the great things about estrogen declining. There are a few, but that is one of the good ones. So yeah, I set really strong boundaries.
What are some other good things about estrogen declining?
Like I said, there are a few. I think part of estrogen decline is what helped me have my moment, the unraveling moment. It helped me understand me, to go into me and find me, because those goods are sweet in there. That me in there is pretty freaking awesome. But that's about it. I mean, decline in estrogen, there's not a whole lot of positive things to say about it.
Yeah.
And it's real. And it's part of why women feel crappy.
Yeah. So there's different ages that people are listening to this and different phases of their life, right? And so, this is going to mean something different for someone, for example, if they're in their 20s or in their 30s, but I think, or even in their 40s or 50s. But I think that, aging is a part of life. And there's a certain quality of accepting that process and kind of the beauty of some of the hardships. I mean, physically my body doesn't look like how it used to, and it's like there's a process of accepting, that this is changing, and that's part of and seeing the beauty in it.
I would go so far as to say accepting could potentially feel a little limiting. I honor it.
Right.
I honor it. Because honor is very different. For me, it's a very different process. Like when I'm really specific about the language I use. Like when I write, I like labor over some of the words, because the shift of one word can make all the difference in the narrative that goes on after that, right? Mm-hmm. So when I honor the imperfections, the changes, the shifts, when I honor them, I can find peace with them. When I accept them, I'm kind of saying, all right, I know this sucks, but I'm finding the but.
I think I was looking at acceptance, not as much as, because there's I guess two ways to perceive, or maybe there's more, but acceptance of like, I don't really want to do this, but I'm accepting it.
Yeah.
Versus wholehearted acceptance of this is what is, and
the collective. Yeah.
You know what I mean? More in the way that you're saying honoring, I was seeing it. But I do think that acceptance does have, can have the quality of language around like, I don't want to do this, but I accept it. And then there's another side of acceptance of, more open acceptance of, let me be with this, and the beauty of this, and accept this moment, even if it is hard.
Totally.
Totally. So, but I love the honoring too, because I think that it's one and the same sort of.
I mean, when women gathered in a circle, they honored one another. They honored the process of childbirth. They honored the rite of passage from bearing children to not bearing children. There's an honor there, right? We need to gather in circles more. Mm-hmm. We need to rewild a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happened between 42 and now you're 47?
47, almost 48. So what's happened? Lots happened. I went from thinking food was everything to the great realization that consciousness, aligning with time, what we put on our body is as important as what we put in our body.
Meaning sunscreen?
Meaning really cleaning up the skincare, the getting chemicals out of your life. Endocrine disruptors, estrogens do a massive amount of harm to women as they accumulate in the fat and in the systems. They can wreak havoc on the hormonal cascade. So that was one of the things I learned through my own health journey, is like when you really clean it up, and it's not easy. I mean, we don't
Like,
have.
what are some signs that somebody could look for to clean up?
Well, I think every woman should clean up. They should really, I mean, makeup is one of those things, like really effective makeup is not clean. Like, there are a few and they're super expensive. But skincare, you can clean up very easily. There are a myriad of choices. And I think that's the place to start. And the skin is the largest organ of the body. Obviously, we all know that by now. But what the skin tells us is basically the mirror for the workings of the inner body. So beauty is really coming from like good skin, skin without rashes, skin without bumps and things. It's an inside job. It's not an outside job. I mean, there's a multi-billion-dollar industry telling us it's an outside job. It's really an inside job. And then it's our job to really keep the chemicals at bay, because the more synthetic estrogens we're putting on our skin, it's disrupting our entire hormonal system.
So you're talking about like avoiding certain types of makeup that have chemicals in them, and
It's mainly preservatives, fillers, fragrance, colors. There's a lot. I mean, the list
Deodorant.
is long. Deodorant is a good one. Yeah, deodorant is definitely deodorant. I would say for some people it's a definite. I mean, for those who accumulate estrogen and don't, their body doesn't detox estrogen as well, that's a big one. But I would say lotion is a much bigger one, because we put lotion everywhere, in terms of quantity and size.
so what do you do when you need lotion?
I recommend people use body butters and natural oils.
Right.
'Cause
What do you use?
They do the same thing. I use my skincare.
Okay.
My A-Skin, which I made because my younger son had eczema. I was trying to clean up everything possible. So I started, playing around with natural oils, botanicals, butters, and herbs, and created this line that's completely clean. And I've been using it for almost 15 years.
Wow.
12 years.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So you did that
And
through research?
I did that through research and trial and error, and just really simplifying, like just living. I mean, we live in a concrete jungle. There's like a lot going on all the time
In New York City.
in New York City. So there's you can take the girl out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the girl. And so there's a part of me that really longs for that connection to nature, and really connecting with what I put on my skin is one of those big things. Feels good.
How old was your son when he developed eczema?
A year old.
And then how long did it last for?
I mean, every once in a while he gets it now, but we've been battling it. I
How
think
old is he now?
he's 11.
Okay.
11. Yeah.
My son had some eczema as well. It's gone now. But he was tearing up his hands because it's right there.
It's
and
itchy.
It's easy.
Yeah.
And,
You can see it.
Yeah. We would have to put Band-Aids on his hands to go to school every day. I mean,
Yeah. It's no fun.
yeah. And it's the itching sensation. It's like, it almost like inches your brain.
Yeah.
It's so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But I do think that there's so many internal factors that show up externally.
Yeah.
And even just like, I'm just speaking for myself now because I'm thinking about my own skin of, probably something I need to pay more attention to. But even just drinking more water helps a lot,
Oh yeah.
right?
It's imperative. The brain doesn't function properly without water. The lymphatic system doesn't move without water. And if our lymphatic system isn't moving, we're not detoxifying.
Do you drink a lot of water?
I drink enough water. I mean, I need support in so many different levels. So you asked me some of the things. One of the things I do is I make herbal teas, and then I drink them for like 3 days. So that's another thing. Water doesn't really quench my thirst. I found I need a bit of flavor, and so herbal teas really help me. And there's a calming aspect to making these things and having my hands and my food and it's a connection.
Yeah,
It's a connection
I
that I
understand
have.
that.
And the flowers like clover, I love seeing the buds and then watching them open. Like there's a real presence to that.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's like almost some rituals
Oh,
that you've created that align you with time.
Yeah, Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely tea being one of them.
Tea being one of them.
A big one. I should have said that as one of my list.
Thanks
Thanks for asking that question. Yeah,
you said it. Just maybe a little bit later,
Yeah,
but
yeah, exactly.
yeah, tea. It's like it's so different drinking tea than it is coffee.
I'm not a coffee drinker.
Okay, I'm a coffee drinker,
coffee drinker?
and I do really enjoy tea. And but yeah, the coffee thing is probably not the best thing for me, and I know that. I'll say that that's like I wake up in the morning and I just think about coffee, having my cup of coffee. That's my vice. I don't really, I keep it pretty clean overall, but that's the thing that I probably. But I notice when I drink tea, it's a very different experience. And I notice the difference in how my body feels as well. A big difference. So the tea experience. You make your own tea?
I do. I mean, I do buy certain blends, but yeah, for the most part, I make my own. Only because I'm so darn picky. Like, I'm just so picky. I want it to look a certain way. I want it to smell a certain way. Like when I make chai is like my downfall. And, you want to talk about a vice. I would drink chai all day long, like up until, like if I get a hot chai before bed, like I would do it in a second. But all of those spices are very uplifting and very, like they wake me up. So I can't do it after like 3. But even that, like I find it very specific. Like I don't want it too much cardamom, it's like a very specific flavor that I like.
Yeah. And we're talking about, if you don't drink, if you kind of cut yourself off from the caffeine essentially so that you can have a restful sleep. I'm guessing sleep is
paramount. Holy mackerel, is sleep paramount.
But what happens to your sleep in midlife?
For some women, I mean, I'm one of those lucky ones, like it hasn't disrupted my sleep yet. And I am really, you want to talk about crossing fingers and doing the voodoo dance? Like I am really doing the voodoo dance that it does not affect my sleep. But I mean, at some point it will, right? Like it kind of has to. But sleep is huge. I do a lot of work around sleep and challenges and things in my groups. But the one thing that's so interesting from an Eastern perspective, if I could bring a little East, I know you're down with the East, right?
Oh, yeah.
Super down with the East, yeah. So the balance of yin and yang, and as we age, right, we tend to live in yang more and deplete, or live in yang more and deplete the yin, right? And as we age, the more we deplete the yin, the more that we actually set ourselves up for a harder transition.
So can you just explain the two really quickly for
So
listeners?
Absolutely. So the way I understand it, and I'm by no means a Buddhist scholar, but the way that I kind of understand it and how I've looked at it and sort of made it my own in my practice is that, so the yang is like the light side of the mountain. It's the loud side. It's the light. It's the awake. It's the sunny side. And the yin is more quiet and dark and winter, it's cold. And we need both, right? We need both of those to exist and to create balance. And then, so as we age, so as we're younger, we live in more yang balance. And then as we age, we tend to need to live more in the yin, towards the yin, but still in balance. And women especially tend to push the boundaries with that balance particularly. And so with sleep, and this is why I brought this up, is that women who don't sleep well at night, it's really important to nap. And I don't think anyone really talks about naps and how restorative they can be, particularly for women, having disruptive sleep. Like a 20 or 30 minute nap is like a 90-minute sleep cycle at night. So it can be very restorative. So that's one of the tricks, that's not really a great word, but it's one of the things I let women feel. Like a lot of women have a lot of angst about, well, I don't do this, and this is my vice, and I can't do this, and my body doesn't let me. It's like, let's just honor it. Like, let's honor where you are, and let's work with what you've got, right? And that was like, I mean, I point one finger, but was pointing for it myself. Like I had to honor what my body could do, what it did really well, what it needed support around, right? And so when I started to really, there's that word again, honor, right? When I started to honor that, things started to get a little easier. Sleep got a little easier. Eating got a little easier. Everything got a little easier,
Yeah. I think conventional life, so to speak, doesn't set you up for a nap. But I do think that when I've taken naps, like sometimes I'll try to push through something and then I'll just realize I'm just tired and I need to take a nap. And I'm fortunate enough that I have a lifestyle where I can at times, because it does really restore and then I can end up actually being more productive. But those naps can be great.
Totally.
And even I've heard that Ariana Huffington in her Thrive office, they have like these napping pods. So I think that like this is like
Oh, yeah.
conscious offices.
How great.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that.
What's the best advice you've ever been given?
That's a good one. I don't know.
Could be a quote or something you've read or heard.
I think women heal women. Honestly, I think when we hold space and we don't give our power away, we don't decide someone else has the answer, but we just hold space for each other, I really believe that women heal women.
Tell us how we can get in touch with you.
Oh, this is the fun part. MichelleAspinwall.com. That's my website. And I'm on the socials, Michelle P. Aspinwall. And yeah, that's the way.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Michelle.
Thank you. Great.